Because I'm Irish, they always play U2 music. You, you get what you want. I guess I have to accept it. So I'm going to talk about marketing in a new world of subscriptions. Some of you who would have been one of the earlier sessions might be familiar with some of these topics, so I'll move through some pieces quickly and then we'll get into core content. First point I want to make is that there seems to be a service for every type of product you can imagine. Now, you're probably wondering what I mean. Well, what I mean is you can get food as a service. You can get more food as a service. You can get beauty as a service, lipstick as a service, clothes as a service, more clothes as a service. Underwear comes as a service. Gardening, shopping, entertainment, news, more entertainment, music, books, beards. It doesn't stop, right? Sunglasses as a service. Meat can arrive at your house as a service. Even just things from Japan. This is the world we're going to. And by the way, you might think that that's weird. There's actually a lot of things from Japan. It turns out you can get many of these things. And the point I'm saying, I guess, is that this isn't even the tip of the iceberg. Everything you can imagine these days can be put into a box and shipped to you as a sort of recurring basis, and they want your money every month. And that's a world we all have to prepare for. I'm not saying it's right, but I am saying it's reality. Japanese shit will show up in your house and you're going to pay for it. So if you can think of it, any product, any service, no matter how weird, someone somewhere is going to try and get it to you per month. And apparently people want this. In fact, 80% of people want a subscription model. They want this idea of not paying a full heavy cost up front. They want to be able to just subscribe, dip their toe in, see if they get any value. The market is growing and growing. 420 billion was spent in this, and that is an old stat. I guarantee you that's much closer to $1 trillion now. And it all comes down to two magic words, this idea of per month. The entire economy is moving towards this idea of you have all of these monthly fees, ownership is moving away, and subscription is the new norm. And this is changing everything for us as technologists, as entrepreneurs, as marketers, as leaders. Everything is changing. We're moving from a world of brand promiscuity to brand loyalty or monogamy. So for the longest time, marketers obsess over this idea of brand loyalty, but it turns out you can be loyal to more than one brand. In your house, you probably have products by Apple and Samsung and Amazon and Google and Nest and Dropcam and you name it. Where they want to get to is a place where you subscribe to one and only one, because that subscription locks you in for the rest of your life. And that's a much better place than having to try and reconvince you every single month when you go to the store what you want to buy. The business is like this because you move from this chaotic revenue, which is will they, won't they? Let's hope we can keep them going. Let's get more athletes to wear our clothes or whatever it is that makes sense, to predictable revenue. We now know we have subscribers. We can now predict churn. We can predict expansion. This has changed a lot of what it means to actually convert a customer. The world is now one of try before you buy, not buy before you try. And for a lot of the modern day marketing techniques, a lot of things have to change. We've gone from, because of this, we've gone from a complex, involved sales process where in the early days, for software, say specifically, or any significantly large purchase, you would have a large upfront sales process to try and overcome the sort of amount of resistance you'll get when you ask someone for tens of thousands of dollars. It's different when you're asking them for $500 a month. They'll try it once. It's a much smoother process. And ultimately what all this leads to is marketing needs to be built around customers' success and less around focusing on this single moment of conversion. So what? So the subscription world's here to stay. It's lucrative. It's very lucrative. All the businesses that have embraced moving to this world have done incredibly well. The market has rewarded it consistently because you get this insane growth that I'll get into in a little bit. It's a different business model. It fundamentally is. The role of marketing has changed, and the new role is about customer success. So what I would like to talk to you about is this idea that customer retention is now the core job of a marketer, and it's not so much about this idea of conversion anymore. Because we've learned a lot about conversion over the past 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Like Avinash, I'm no fan of funnels, but we've gone through this whole world, this phase of we need to attract people, and we have all our techniques for doing this. And we've perfected, or at least we've exaggerated and exploited every last drip we could get out of these techniques. We also took all this onto websites where we do things like A/B testing, where we sort of say, hey, we've given up on the idea that we can design. Let's just roll out every possible design and see which one wins. And we learned all sorts of cool things. Like we found out that, simple language beats complicated language. And we've learned that like big buttons outperform small buttons, and buttons in the right place beat buttons in the wrong place, and buttons that you can see are better than buttons you can't see. And this is typically the state of the art of what we've been learning about web design for the last 10 years, unfortunately. But we're getting there. But we've gone through all of this. We've learned each of these practices. For me, like, there are now loads of ways you can grow a business, assuming you have an attractive product. There are loads of ways you can attract people to try out your product. And we see this all the time. The time for businesses to go from 0 customers to like multi-million-dollar businesses is shrinking dramatically. It's becoming much, much quicker because of all the ways you can distribute your product, all the different ways you can market yourself with a small budget, whether that's getting into the App Store, whether it's blogging. The cost of entry is a lot smaller than it used to be. Benedict Evans, who's an analyst for Andreessen Horowitz, he made a point a while ago. He said, every new messaging app getting to 1 million users is no big deal anymore. Most business, if you get anywhere, you'll get 1 million users, but that's irrelevant. Actually keeping users and getting to like the next phase is the hard part. Keeping customers is incredibly important. Winning them is something that's gotten a lot easier, but all we've really done is pushed the problem down the funnel in a sense. And this is why this idea of retention is so important, and why I would say retention is like the next funnel, if you like. Retention is where we need to focus as marketers. So it's no longer enough simply to get them over the line. When they're over the line, we need to keep them. And to give you one really simple example, I was asked this question recently: which would you rather, 1 million customers after 4 days, or 1 million active customers after 16 months? And it seems like an obvious, like 1 million customers in 4 days we'd all take that, right? That company was called Yo, and they've gone bust. They only lasted 11 months in their entirety. 11 months was all that got them. The other company, Slack, you might have heard of. Slack are going to IPO for somewhere between $7 and $10 billion. They did grow really fast, but more importantly, they obsessed about keeping customers, not just about converting signups or collecting email addresses. So retention is the key here. And the reason it's important is because it is the future. If you don't have a subscription model, if you don't have a way where your customers can sort of periodically consume your product without having to pay a large upfront cost, you will struggle. So if retention is important, how do we measure it? The biggest variable you're going to have to obsess over in this world as your product moves to being something that's a monthly or a yearly fee is what we call net dollar retention. It basically means if all of you sign up for my product today, how much is the collective revenue I got from you all still worth in 1 year's time? It's as simple a question as that. And if that number is more than 100%, it means that you are all growing as a group of customers, and that's a wonderful thing for me. And if that number is shrinking, it means my business eventually goes away. And the role of retention here is like crucial. If you look at, say, the difference between a business that grows, where you all spend collectively 1% more next year than you did this year, versus 1% less, they're two fundamentally different businesses with two fundamentally different sort of growth methods, if you like. The blue line here, if that business sent all its sales team and all its marketing team home, never ran another ad, and took their hands off the wheel, that business will still default grow. The gray line here will default die. That's the difference between a business that expands and a business that churns over time. If you think of any of the subscription products, if you can get people in the door and keep them, and ideally get them to upgrade or spend more, that literally changes the entire outlook of your business. For example, if this is what we would call, like, say, cohort retention, each line here, each horizontal line is like a chunk of customers. If they get bigger over time, your business is phenomenally healthy. You're basically guaranteed a very positive trajectory in the future. If it's shrinking over time, you're effectively burning through the forest, right? You're getting people in, they're coming in the front door, they're trying it out, and they're eventually going to disappear. And that means you'll just run through every customer. And the danger here is that you will run out of customers. You're effectively burning through them all, right? If you have a leaky business, the last thing you want is more customers. Put another way, if there's a limited supply of water and you have one bucket with a huge hole in it, don't pour it into that bucket just yet. Fix the bucket, right? And if churn is a problem, the market responds ridiculously quickly. So Blue Apron, which was the very, very first slide I put up, are on the left here, and they're the dark blue line. And you can see how many of their customers they retain after 2 years. It's a very small number, right? It is somewhere in the region of like 18%. That means if you all sign up, in 2 years' time, only 18% of you are still customers. The rest of you are effectively gone. That performance is rewarded with a stock crash from about $10 down to just being under a dollar. The company's market cap went out at a phenomenally high price with a lot of hype. It's probably going to get delisted if it continues like this, unless they can turn something around. This is why churn matters, and this is why expansion matters. On the flip side, if you want to talk about what positive looks like, here's some companies that have IPO'd over the last couple of years. And here's their retention metrics. So Twilio, Atlassian, Slack, who I just talked about, in those cases, they win a customer 1 month, and a year later, that customer is worth 140% of what they came in at. That's incredible. That literally is incredible. And that is the sweet spot that you all need to focus on getting. If you shift to a subscription model, it is not enough to say we're just going to charge per month. Whether it's razor blades or Photoshop, it doesn't actually matter. This is the dynamic that we need. And the target range here, typically to be like considered a really healthy business, is way above 100%. It's not just keeping the customers, it's keeping them and getting more and more out of them. As marketers, we have to obsess about this because it is the figure that governs what we call LTV CAC. You all know LTV CAC, I'm sure, or some version of LTV CAC. It basically tells you how much money you can spend on a customer. On the left, we have the lifetime value of a customer. So if I buy you today for $100 and you come in spending whatever, like $100, that's a bad purchase. But if I know that in a year's time you'll be spending 140, then I can afford to do that. I can justify that. I can say I'm investing now knowing that the future value of you will be strong and it'll outperform the cost of what I had to pay to get you. This is why if your customers aren't sticking around, you can't afford to pay for them. You can't afford to market to them. So this is the whole reason, the whole sort of measure behind the subscription economy that often gets overlooked when people say, let's just charge per month and see what happens. Bad shit happens. Bad shit. So where does it usually go wrong? Well, it goes wrong somewhere like this. Usually you do all this stuff, people come to your homepage, and it all goes to shit. Most of the time when businesses ask me, hey, what's going wrong? And I'm like, yep, that's the problem. Sometimes they actually try to sign up and then it goes to shit. Sometimes they try to sign up and they get to your product onboarding and then it goes to shit. Sometimes they become a happy customer and you have to keep them as a happy customer, otherwise it all goes to shit. The moral of this story is you have to work very hard to stop it all going to shit, right? And the key area where marketing needs to adjust its focus. Obviously, we still have to be the people who bring the customers in the door. That won't change. We have to partner with sales. That won't change. But it's this handover here between everything that we say as marketers and everything that the product actually delivers is so important, and it's so overlooked. It is essential that you build the thing that you sell and that you sell the thing that you build. And if you let those two things get out of sync with each other, you end up running beautiful marketing campaigns for products that do not exist. And that is an absolute nightmare, and you'll get rewarded with high churn, high turnover, no LTV CAC, no marketing. So onboarding is the key for me here. And onboarding is the area that I think marketing needs to wrap its arms around. It is effectively the new conversion. So to retain customers, we need to get them onboarded and successful. And we've all had this experience where you can see where the money was invested and you can see where it was not, right? Here's a great diagram by somebody called Kathy Sierra, who describes, this is how we treat customers before they buy our product. It's glossy. It's like, paid celebrity advertisements. It's billboards. And then they buy the product and they bring it home and they're like, I'm so excited by this. And what do? We give them this world that basically says, we got what we wanted out of you, please get the fuck out of here, right? I don't care if you ever use my camera, I have your money, ha ha ha. That's basically the experience you give them, okay? the software version of this looks something like this. We have beautiful, simple file management. And you're like, OK, I'll try that out. And like, it costs $5,000 up front, no recurring fees. And you're like, OK, I'll try that out, $5,000. Let's see what happens. Boom, here's the file matrix. Did I say beautiful? I meant shit-filled. And that's like literally the experiences that we create when we have a really bad handover between product and marketing, or from marketing to product. So we keep coming back to this idea of onboarding. When we talk about onboarding, it's the process of like trying it out, potentially buying and paying for it, getting set up for success, buying more over time, and learning about the changes in your product. So if your product gets better over time, you need to ensure your customers are experiencing those improvements. Otherwise, you're building it for no one, and that's a bad outcome to be chasing. So what makes a great onboarding? For me, it's the bridge between these two worlds. I'm kind of a little bit pissed off about filling in a form. You keep asking me how many employees I have. I don't really want to tell you. What is my job title? Why is this irrelevant? Blah, blah, blah. And somewhere on the other side, we have to be a happy customer, right? And that's the job here. And companies have taken to obsessing over this, and it does not surprise me that they're some of the hottest and most successful companies. My industry is technology personally, but I've seen this everywhere. If you work in, say, FMCG, go and Google on YouTube for unboxing and look at how often people simply record the act of what it feels like to open a new Oculus Rift or a new whatever, like Nintendo Switch or any of these things. People unboxing is a new obsession. The onboarding experience for digital goods looks more like this. It's like, let me hold your hand and walk you through this product so that you know exactly how to get the best value possible, right? This is Slack's onboarding. Apple launched Apple Music, a subscription service. And what do? Well, they basically want to make sure that you listen to the best music as quickly as possible. So they designed this rich, engaging thing where you tap all the songs you like and you tap all the things you want to remove. And the whole idea is, hey, customer, we want to make sure that for you to keep spending $9 a month on Apple Music, we better be playing the right music for you. So let us obsess over getting that right. Similarly, probably the hottest new email client in the world right now is a thing called Superhuman. They want you to use all of their fancy shortcuts that nobody else has. So they've built in this little game mode into the product. So your first experience is, let us show you all the ways our product is fast, delightful, cool. And they have to obsess over making sure you experience that value. Here's the third one. These are just random examples of modern day onboarding. I'm deliberately not pitching my own product here, to be clear. As in, this is nothing to do with us. Here's another one, Coda. This is like the future of Google Docs in a sense. Again, they obsess over walking you around their product because they know that if you don't see that value, you're gone. And then all those advertising that they did, all of that blogging, that SEO, it's all gone to shit. Because if you log in and you have a shit experience, you're gone. And not only are you gone, you're not coming back. And they get that. So they obsess over this stuff. So it's this idea of this handover between marketing and product is where the battle is lost or won. So what can we do as marketers? Well, there are sort of 5 ideas I'll put forward to you as ways in which you can directly affect the value of your own business. And I'll walk through each of them. The first one is you need to understand the experience of what it's like to start using your product today. Most people have not signed up for their own product in the last year. And that's terrible because people are trying to do it right now and it's probably shit. So you need to work on this. So the recommendation I have here is interview some customers. Talk to people who signed up and disappeared. What went wrong? What were they looking for? What did they not see? Talk to people who signed up and converted. What worked out well? What did they find? When did they know that you were the tool for them? Talk to people who signed up, started the trial, and then quit. What did they not like? What's broken here? And you need to have these good interviews where you ask these open-ended questions. Learn what is not working in your system, because if your system is broken, your business is broken. And lastly, talk to people who are actively on a trial. That's where you get the most energy from people. You say, hey, I'm just curious, where are you at? What are the decision points here? What's uncertain? What have you liked so far? Where have the stumbling blocks been, etc.? You need to get this information. And then from all of those, some customers you will safely say, we can't help that person. They're looking for the wrong thing. And some customers will be like, we can definitely do a lot of work here. You have to decide who you can onboard. And to onboard anyone to your product, again, whether you're like a box of things from Japan, a beard company, a meat company, software, Photoshop, a conference, whatever, you can't sell to everyone. People have to need your product, want your product, and be capable of buying and using your product. No two of these are sufficient for you to actually have a successful customer. For example, you can need something and you can really desire something, but if you're not capable of using it, it's no good. Or if you can't afford it, it's no good. You know, we've all been to the Tesla website. We think we need a Tesla. We think we want a Tesla, but there's no way any of us can afford a Tesla. And that's just the reality of the situation. And Tesla can't do a lot with that unless they want to drop their price or maybe increase their salary. Similarly, you can need something and be capable of getting it, but just not really want it. Like most people going to the dentist, right? Yes, you do need to do it, and yes, you are capable of making a booking. You just have no appetite for doing so. And lastly, the most obvious is you can want something and be capable of getting it, but just have no real need. And if you've ever gone into most electronics shops, you'll find yourself looking around going, this is cool, that's cool, I don't need any of this shit, let me go home. So you have to understand who you can and who you can't onboard. And one technique I would say when you're considering how you walk somebody towards your product, a technique I have often encouraged people to use is what I call the 4 forces. And this technique is borrowed from a methodology called jobs to be done, which is a whole other thing that we'll talk about some other day. But generally speaking, it says that for a customer to switch from their existing product to your product, there is 4 forces at play. 2 of these forces are good for you, and 2 of them are bad for you. The 2 green ones are what's bad with their existing world and what do they like about yours. The other 2 are what are they afraid of about switching to you and what do they still like about their old world. So if they're switching from like Android to iPhone, maybe they like the fact that they have all the cables, they don't know how expensive your phone's going to be, but they like the camera, and the problem with Android is whatever, right? Like those 4 forces, you should be able to document them for anyone who's considering switching to your product, and you should be able to address them in your onboarding. You want to maximize the green forces and minimize the red forces, and that's what causes a switch. Thirdly, I'd say is your product will probably have more than one type of customer. So if you're Photoshop, you're selling to web designers and you're selling to photographers at the very least. But most people are catering to more than one customer. Where most onboarding goes wrong is you've got multiple different types of use cases, but you're trying to force them all through the exact same path. And as a result, you end up with a one-size-fits-none solution. It doesn't perform for anyone. What you need to do is understand the different types of customers you have and design an onboarding that works for them best. Tailor what you're asking them to do to their intent, to their behavior, and you'll get a much more performant onboarding. If you are going to work on your onboarding, it's really important that you measure the changes that you want to see. So the easiest way to do this, because again, metrics is a whole other talk, but the easiest thing you should ask yourself is, what do the best customers do? Is it that after they sign up, they invite 10 friends, or they set up 3 email alerts, or whatever makes sense for your product? Maybe they invite their team, maybe they save their first file, start their first project, whatever. But you need to have a way of saying, is this increasing or decreasing over time? Are we getting better at getting good customers, or are we getting worse? That is ultimately the definition of your onboarding, is are we getting more of what we want? We assume good customers correlates with loyalty, correlates with expansion revenue, all that good stuff. If we can in any way positively affect that, that's a really, really positive place to be. So I would fundamentally encourage you all to make sure you will know if this gets better or worse. And then lastly, we need to work with our product team because we're handing customers into their product. And again, whether it's software, whether it's software or whether it's like hardware or fast-moving consumer goods, we're handing people to them. We need to know that whatever we've been putting on the billboards, whatever we've been saying in the market, will match to whatever they experience when they walk in the door of the product. If we're saying we're the world's best time tracker, inside the product, it better be obvious that we're a good time tracker and that they can track time, etc. This comes back to this core idea of build the thing that you're selling and sell the thing that you've built. If you let those 2 get out of connect, you're in big trouble. So, all businesses are going to become subscription businesses, almost without exception, whether we can like it or not. Retention is going to be the new metric for marketers. Retention will come from getting your users successful at using your product, and successful users come from having a great onboarding experience. That's all I was here to say. I want to say thank you. I'm Des from Intercom.